Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Ask Pops. I am your big bro War.
I'm Pops.
And we ready to get it in, with another podcast, man. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate all the support, all the views, all the positive feedback. Hey man, if you have anything you want to hear us talk about, you can DM us on our Instagram page. You can leave a comment under the video. You can email us at askpops70@gmail. So yeah, man, we're gonna go ahead and get into it. Okay. So getting back to the hot topics. So we left off talking about Trump and everything.
Yeah.
And my next question for you was going to be, because you were saying that, hey, okay, regardless of a lot of people didn't want to see him win, although he did get the popular vote, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that just are scared right now. Don't know where the country's headed. A lot of the policies and things that's been put in place, is kind of backpedaling on some of those, but one thing you said that I completely agree with is he's in office. We just want him to do a good job and not take this country backwards and hurt the people hurt the people that live here. So what type of things and policies that he had presented do you feel like would hurt us and take us back?
Well, because there's so many policies at that level, I will honestly say I have no idea. Okay. But I will say this. When he starts making certain policies, even ones out of the prior term that he had about building a wall and doing all of these things that we know you can't do that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the fact that it comes out of his mouth and then we think about, but if he does, what's it going to cost us and all that? Right. So I think we shouldn't look at Trump with his policies. Mm-hmm. Every person I feel like should look at policies on their local level. Right. Because what Trump is putting, or what any president puts into action and brings into law, it always trickles down, and they are so big that it doesn't really affect us. Mm-hmm. Unless there's a world war, or unless there's economy drop, like back when it was 2007 to 2010. The economy. And that really wasn't a president decision. That was the economy in all of the states that just crashed. It was a banking problem, not necessarily a presidential problem. Right. So I think what we should do is just kind of chill, give him a little time. Like I say, pray for him. Right. If you believe in prayer, pray that he will make good decisions. Because he's going to make decisions that we don't even know about. Right. Some of those decisions and some of those documents he signed, we will never ever know. We'll just see the effects of them down the road at some point years later. So I think we should be more concerned and more involved with our local government, more so than the national government. Right. So right now, I'm just chilling. I didn't vote for Trump. It's on record. But I want him to be a good president. That's what I have to say about it. I want him to be a good president. So as he begin to make different laws, put them in place, then maybe we can revisit that. Right.
Okay. So, but I do want to ask you one question. Yeah. So there was been a lot of talk about, and we didn't get to this last episode, but a lot of talk about. You remember the clergy lady that was speaking at in the church where Trump and everybody was. I believe it was like something around the inauguration, where she was talking about the transgender community, LGBT. That may feel in fear for their lives because of some of the decisions and some of the rhetoric that he's been talking about. She was also talking about not deporting a lot of the illegal aliens that are here that have come across the border. Basically saying, hey, we need to look out for them. We need to be a place of refuge. How do you feel? We'll talk about those two topics because those are two of the topics that are, especially with all of these videos and pictures that you're seeing, as far as with all of the deportations. How do you feel about that? As far as like, should they be allowed to stay if they come in legally, or do you feel like they should be deported?
Okay, so the LGBTQ.
Okay, we'll talk about that first. Okay.
I saw just recently a video podcast about this particular minister, the church where he actually pastors. And evidently he put a person out that came in. It was a bigender male, but he came into the service as a female. And the pastor actually asked him to leave.
Okay.
I mean, he asked him in a nice way, and and so long story short, when the person was offended and actually left, said, if you preach about God, why can't you live, in so many words, why are you not living what you preaching? And they were offended and left. So there were cameras rolling.
So the pastor said that to the person that came in.
Yeah. Noticed that they were there and said, I don't mean no harm, but I would like for you to leave the service unless you can change your dress and come back.
Okay. Yeah.
So when it comes to that community, like I said, I have drawn the line in the sand to where I don't believe male or female should go in another's bathroom. Right. If you're a male, you should not go into a female's restroom, or vice versa.
Definitely.
I don't believe a male should be transgender and play female sports.
Right, I agree.
So I do have what I call draw my line in the sand, where I stand behind certain things.
Right.
But that's it's not a new subject, but it's a new subject in how we're dealing with it now. Because there've been transgenders throughout history.
Yeah.
But now it's become an issue because they want rights as a transgender. When I was growing up, I mean, Teddy was Teddy.
Right.
But he knew he was Teddy.
Right.
Everybody else knew Teddy. But he wasn't trying to do nothing but just be Teddy.
Right.
So we're in an environment now where, they feel they have to have medical rights as far as health insurance as a transgender. They want to be able to run for different offices and do everything as a transgender. So with that, it's talking about what we're doing. We're changing our whole culture as a whole culture, where we're separating men and women. Because I believe gender is very plain and specific. I believe a male is a man that has a penis. If you have a penis, I can't see you being anything than a man. If you have a breast and a vagina, I see you being a woman. And that's the way it's been that way throughout history.
Right.
So I believe that we should deal with, if you want certain rights and certain things, you should be able to have that particular right that you want to have, whether you're a man or a woman.
Right.
But they're specifically saying, I want to be considered this whole new race, and I want to be able to have rights. So that's going to take years down the road to be able to work all of that out.
Yeah.
It sounds simple in theory, but when you really talk about, if we let you have these things, now we got male, female, and LGBTQ, now we got a whole new race of people that we got to figure out. So how do we blend you into the society that's been around since creation? So to me, that's going to take years.
Pop, like, I have to say this. So for me, I agree with you in a lot of ways. I guess where my mind goes is I kind of have distinguished human rights from necessarily gender rights or gender identification. And so let me explain.
Okay.
So like you were saying, I definitely don't agree with, if you were born a male, go to the male bathroom or go to a unisex bathroom. If you're born with the vagina, breast, like you said, with female genitalia, you're a woman. I can't see you as anything other than that. You know, whether or not you identify internally as that, that's not my business. I can't tell you what you identify as, but at the same time, you have an identity that you were born with. Your DNA,
Yes.
I feel like, you know, Creator made you this way.
Yeah.
So that's who you are. That's how I see you. But if you see yourself as something different, I don't feel like I have the right to tell you how you see yourself.
Right.
But I will say this, when it comes to, you know, just the anatomy in and of itself, okay, if you are born a man, you want to change your anatomy into a woman, take hormones and have surgery or whatever to change what you were born as, that you feel internally that you identify as, you know, to fit what you see yourself as. Okay, that's fine. That's none of my business. Okay, do you? But at the same time, physically, it's known that men are stronger than women. It's known that, you know, in most cases, a woman can't beat a man in certain sports. You know, just on you take any average guy, any average woman, put them on a basketball court, who's gonna win?
Yeah.
Any average man, any average woman, put them in the boxing ring, who's gonna win?
Yeah.
You know, so those things I definitely don't agree with.
Okay.
You know, if they have a league of their own or what, you know, of people that have certain identities, that's fine. But I don't feel like it's fair or proper sportsmanship to put a born man in a sport with a woman, because physically and just based upon anatomy and muscle structure, it's not that man that was born a man that is a transgender woman has the upper hand and an advantage. It you know, to me it's like taking steroids, you know, but that's just a generalized way of saying it. So I completely agree with that. Now, but for me, okay, when it comes to, you know, a transgender person coming into the church,
Yeah.
you know, or a cross-dresser coming into the church.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like when it comes to a pastor telling a person, you can't be here unless you change your clothes, to me, that wouldn't sit right with me. And the reason it wouldn't sit right with me is because, okay, if you're looking at this person and you can't see past what this person has on, to see that person, if you're a preacher, to see that person's soul.
Yes.
And to see that person's need for this loving God that you're standing at the pulpit proclaiming, loves everybody and sent Jesus to die for the sins of everybody. You're seeing this as a sin and as the abomination and all of that.
Yeah.
If you telling a lie, that's an abomination.
Yes.
If you're prideful, that's abomination.
Yes.
If you're a person that store up a lot of stuff and you gossiping, that's an abomination.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, at the end of the day, I don't feel like that was necessarily proper.
I agree.
You know, or the best way to handle that sort of a situation.
I totally agree.
But you know, but that I would just based on, you know, just what his personal views were. You know.
Well, let's use that as an example, and I'm gonna take that to a different point.
Okay, yeah.
So, I was a member of a church years and years ago. I helped the church because I was at the point where I sang a lot, just a lot.
Right.
And so I met this guy at a coffee shop, and ends up he was a pastor at what they call Serenity Church, which is different from Baptist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Word of Faith. It's totally different. They believe in Jesus, they believe all of that. So I'm saying to Serenity Church, if somebody's listening to this podcast, I love being a part of that ministry. I'll say that. So in that church, and it's been so many years ago, 40 years, it's been like 50, a long time.
Yeah.
In that church, you had just, I'll say, just regular people. Then you had, back during that time, they were like rockers. You know, and they dressed like rockers.
Yeah.
There were homosexuals. There were lesbians in that church that were married in that church way back then. Now, whether legally the marriage was honored by law, I don't know.
Right.
But it was enough for them.
Right.
So I bring that out to say that this church was pastored by this person.
Mm-hmm.
This person had beliefs that this church is going to be run this way.
Mm-hmm.
People that came to that church agreed with that.
Right.
So here we have the pastor that I told you about.
Mm-hmm.
They elected him as pastor. I don't know if he was the founder of the church or whatever,
Right.
but they elected him as pastor. And because it's kind of like his house,
Right.
they call him my house. That's what they say
Right.
from the pulpit.
Yeah.
To where he could say in his house, like in your house,
Right.
there's certain things you're not going to tolerate.
Right.
Because it's your house.
Right.
That don't make it right or wrong. It makes it right because it's your house.
Right.
So what you and I talked about when we talked about religion and different denominations,
Mm-hmm.
that everybody's all over the place.
Yeah.
But because they set their own standards, they can have whatever they want in their house,
Right.
as long as it's not illegal.
Right.
So with this particular pastor, I'm assuming he set a standard for his church to say, well, you know, it's okay for you to be whatever, but when you come in here, we want you to look like what you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so from that regard, you're going to have a whole lot. And see, even there were pastors that had refused to marry homosexuals and lesbians. And some of them were even taken to court to sue them because of that.
Right. Yeah, I remember.
You know,
Yeah.
so like I say, the subject is such a broad and big subject.
Yeah.
We're going to have to take it in little pieces
Yeah.
and little doses,
Yeah.
you know, so that we can come up with what works for everybody.
Yeah.
So, but right now, it's like I was saying in another podcast, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have This Is Who I Am, Hear Me Roar.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fighting and fighting and fighting for these things. But because the Constitution
Mm-hmm.
was set up a certain way, it's the United States House.
Yeah.
And because it's set up this way, this is the way we're going to run it.
I mean, you literally will have to redefine marriage. You have to, and that's from a religious context. Now, when it comes to legally being married and the legal benefits of marriage, the legal rights of marriage, that to me, I have even kind of been able to distinguish those things as well. Because I mean, when you think about it, like marriage back in ancient times didn't look like necessarily the marriage that we have today.
No, it's been changed.
It's been changed.
Yeah.
It's, you know, so it's like, you know, but from a religious sense, where it comes to legal marriage being between a man and a woman, you know, whereas even in this context here in America, we don't have room, there's no legal polygamy. You know what I mean? Where in other countries, other cultures, whether that's, you know, Islamic cultures or, you know, African cultures, those things are legal.
They have concubines and
concubines, all of that. I mean, you have legal prostitution in places. You have so many things that just within this Western context may seem extreme and fringe, you know?
Yeah, and it's changed over the years.
Yeah.
The years, because even in this country, if you've been with a person, lived in the same house for 7 years, it's common law.
Right.
You know, so over the years, after certain people that set up laws die out, then you get a whole new group and a whole different mentality.
Generation.
And so you look at the generation now, things have totally changed. We used to go in and work 9 to 5. Now most kids now working from home on their computers, making 3 times as much as we ever made. So the laws and things are gonna change.
Right.
You just have to give it years, and it's not gonna happen in our lifetime.
Right.
But over the course of years, you'll see those things change. So we're seeing a culture now, we're seeing a group now that says we want to be heard. So that's like the beginning of this. And it didn't start, I mean, it started after we were born. So we've seen the beginnings of it. So it's going to take some years down the road and some different things happening and you're going to have to get somebody that's of that particular group of people. I'm not saying, I'm just for definition. You're gonna have to get somebody in office, and it's got to start at the local level, and you know, and then you've got to build from that.
And that goes back to something we were talking about last podcast, where it was like, you know, there are people in places that control certain elements, whether that's media, whether that's, you know, entertainment, that are able and have the money and the financial funding to be able to promote and to market and to shift certain narratives and to bring certain conversations into the forefront on a larger scale, you know, because they put money and advertising dollars behind it, you know, to make these things hot topics or important issues, you know. So, like, I mean, even the Black Lives Matter movement was a great example of that, you know. So, I mean, that was funded, promoted, marketed, people showing up everywhere, you know, and the mantra of Black Lives Matter had a meaning, but the movement became something entirely different. You know. So so really, you know, again, I feel like for me personally, like, you know, back in the day, I remember coming up and we would watch TV and there were shows where the man and the woman wouldn't even sleep in the same bed. They would be in two separate beds. Like I Love Lucy and all, you know, I'm dating myself, but hey, you know, it is what it is. You know, this is real conversation. You know, where, you know, and it went from that to, okay, maybe they're in the same bed now, but they're not kissing and making love and that sort of a thing. You know, everything was so, what's the word I'm looking, not edited, but what's the word I'm looking for?
I like that.
They just wouldn't allow certain things to be seen, you know. But and then it moved over into, you know, where you had R-rated movies and you know, the whole parental advisory thing, where, you know, based upon the rating of the movie, you could either bring your kids or not bring your kids because you know what you're going to see.
Some of kids weren't allowed if they were a certain age.
Right, exactly. If it was PG-13, if you was under 13, you couldn't get in the movie. You know, so I remember those days. But now it's to the point to where there are times I watch shows and I'm straight. I'm a heterosexual man. I don't understand, you know, the whole LGBTQ thing, but all I do know is I can't control what I'm attracted to. You know what I'm saying? What turns me on, what attracts me, you know, so I give that respect to everybody. That part I do understand. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, if I'm sitting here watching a TV show, I don't want certain images of, you know, two men kissing and that sort of things cramped down my throat. I don't want my little nieces and nephews, you know, coming in and we watching the show and then these things are being literally crammed down their throat for no reason when it doesn't have to be there, you know. So a lot of it feels forced. A lot of it feels, you know, that I don't like feeling of that because it makes my stomach turn. You know, disrespect, but it just bothers me because you know people do what they do. I got nothing but love for everybody, and there are people that I would consider good acquaintances and people that I'm cool with that are, you know, bisexual, gay, all of that sort of thing. But so I mean, a person's character to me isn't necessarily directly related to their sexual preference. You know, that has nothing to do with it, whether a person's a good person or not. But ultimately, I'm just speaking based upon just agendas, based on just about how things are being made more of a conversation now, you know, and that's what just the environment that we live in now. You know, I don't necessarily like feeling like certain things are forced down my throat, certain things are forced down other people's throat. But at the end of the day, I do feel like, you know, that we all, because we all live here, we all have to live together in this society. I do feel like we all do owe each other the same respect. To at least hear and try to understand what other people are going through, what other people are dealing with, and the issues or where they have felt marginalized, and really give respect to that, to where it's not just okay, it's my way, it's how I see it, without any regard for you. You know, because I mean, when you think about even, you know, segregation or racism or that sort of a thing, I don't feel like, you know, it's on the same playing field as, you know, because nobody forces you to be a certain sexuality. Chattel slavery was something completely different. So it's not that people were forced to be slaves. But at the end of the day, I do feel like, you know, there are places where certain sexual orientations have been marginalized, have been, you know, not allowed the same human rights as or the same civil rights as, you know, the general person would be. You know, so and see, when you brought out television, I think that's where change is taking place, because I can say
maybe over the past year, I have seen more shows that where the lead roles are lesbian or homosexuals in the lead role.
Yeah.
With great storylines and everything. And they're able in these movies to openly display what their sexual preferences are. So I don't particularly care for them, but they are getting placed in mainstream where people are able to be more comfortable.
Yeah. So do you feel like those certain things bring more of a humanity to that, as opposed to that being something weird and something, despicable? Does it bring more of a humanity, more of a humanist to it? Like, this is a human being, this is a real life experience that's being shown? Or do you feel like it's to change the minds of people? Because I hear some people using certain things to say that they're trying to make our kids gay. They're trying to make our kids confused. Do you see those roles and those images as just telling stories and bringing a humanist to it? Or do you see it as an agenda to turn the hearts of the kids?